So, automating success, listeners and followers. I have Jeremy on the show today, and Jeremy owns Advanced Automation. So, Jeremy, why don't you introduce yourself?
No worries.
Let's get started here. Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is Jeremy Seiferth. I co-founded and currently co-own Advanced Automation. We're located in Dover, New Hampshire, and we build custom machines and automated systems for people primarily in the industrial manufacturing sector. So it's basically, different automating different processes, usually very customized to the customer's application. Um, I would say 80% of those involve a industrial arm, either an ABB or a FANUC. And, we go after a lot of different sectors. We're not just in, like, say, medical. We get into defense, we get into medical, we get into assembly, welding. We're doing fitness equipment. We're kind of all over the place with just essentially building automated systems. All over the East Coast, really our targeted area.
So, what got you started on this automation journey?
So, Chris and I, my partner, we went to UNH, graduated with mechanical engineering degrees, and then we both actually ended up working at a company called Whelan Engineering over right on the Vermont, New Hampshire border. Great company, very vertically integrated. Had an amazing 5 years with them and started doing industrial automation for them. And what they do, they make blinking lights and warning systems for fire trucks, any DOT vehicles, things like that. So any amber light you see on the road, any police light you see, chances are it's from Whelan. And so we were able to really automate their processes, and we had a great leadership over there that kind of gave us free reign a little bit and said, "Hey, go check out our plant." They have a 6-building campus up in New Hampshire, and everything from injection molding to production machining to now production welding. And they just said, "Go pick some topics that you guys think are best. Obviously come back to us with an ROI and say, let's automate these." And so it really got us involved, kind of from a ground level perspective, but it gave us the opportunity to do a bunch of different applications. We weren't just focused on, say, dispensing or welding or machine tending. We got to do a lot, and it really just made us hungry, and it kind of opened the doors to the future of what we could do. And it was the hardest part of my day of my life was to walk in there and say, "Hey, we're going to start our own business." And, looking back on it, it was without a doubt the hardest thing I've ever done. I think Chris could attest to that. And, we kind of branched out on our own. We were broke. I remember I got my first credit card I've ever got, and went and bought a laptop and started drawing stuff in SolidWorks for people, just trying to make money any way we could. And then Whelan, actually, we had such a great relationship with them that they kind of helped us out. They gave us some projects, and still today, they're one of our big customers that we do, some complex automation for. So that's pretty much where it started, I guess. But
So I'm smiling because one of the questions as you were talking that I was going to ask was if if Whelan was, almost upset that they gave you guys, this liberty and reign to go and find things to automate. And then all of a sudden you were like, "Hey, I like this so much. We're going to start our own
right.
gig." I mean, what was that like? I mean, you said it was difficult. So,
It was
a lot of people,
incredibly, yes. It was incredibly hard for us to go in and say that, we're going to try it on our own. But the management over there, I mean, they were so understanding. I mean, they wouldn't be where they were if it wasn't for their thoughts of doing that as well. So, everybody was very understanding, and for us too, it was a little bit of a location. Both Chris and I really like the seacoast area of New Hampshire, whereas Whelan is, it's about 2 hours away. It's a bit of a drive. So we found ourselves, at the time we both had girlfriends that were over here, and we were driving quite a ways. So it seemed like, we were more seacoast area people, which was no big deal, but that was kind of a perk, is to try to move our business a little bit more towards the seacoast, to be around the ocean. And there's a whole whole different type of clientele over here as well. So
Jeremy, you and I are like kindred spirits because everything I'm doing right now. So my company, everything that I do, and I don't know what you know about myself, but I started in landscaping, and I ironically I went to school for small circuitry and analysis, so nothing as complex to
wow,
do. But I got into landscaping and snow removal somehow, and now with all this robotic automation going on in our space, that's what my company does, automated outdoor solutions. But we're
sure,
in the Midwest, and I realize it's a wide open market.
yep,
And one of the best things about being an entrepreneur is I can live wherever I want. So
yep,
I'm really trying to blow up the Florida market, and I love the ocean also,
yep.
particularly Southeast Florida. Anyway, so it is interesting that you were like, yeah, I kind of like the coast. I'm going to get out there. So, and then the other interesting thing I just want to hit on for people feel like yourself, and actually I've got an ex-employee of mine that started his own snow removal company. I was talking to him today, actually, just a couple hours before the show, and he's buying some used front end loaders from me. And I think it's weird as leaders, and I wonder if this same thing happened with the leadership that got you guys started. You can kind of see there's just certain people that they kind of have something within themselves that makes them more visionary. And myself, I think, as a leader, you try to build and mentor and cultivate that because that's what's awesome about humanity, right? Is
Right,
not
exactly.
forcing someone to stay in a bound
Yeah.
and just say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you here because it's amazing, Jeremy. It sounds like it came full circle for them anyways. You're
Oh, it
working
has.
on projects with the free
Yes.
liberty to do
Right.
other things. So maybe
Right.
comment on that to inspire some of
Yeah.
the
So
listeners.
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and to that point, I mean, we even have till this day, the team that they have over at Wheelan, we're very close with. We work with, quite often. I wouldn't say daily, probably weekly. We're in touch with them, and we've helped them almost develop their own automation, um, you know, department, if you will, inside. And obviously they're doing their own projects and everything, but we are here to support, and we keep a good friendship. And I think too that we wouldn't be here today without those guys as a company kind of giving us the foundation, but also allowing us to kind of spread our wings a little bit and grow. And I feel the same way of some people that I know, some of my employees that, we would obviously support if that ever came to be. Obviously we would try to keep the best, but there are certain people that just have it in them, like you say, to start their own thing. And I mean,
Well, and it's a unique breed of person that wants to take on the risk of being their
oh, yeah,
own entrepreneur.
absolutely. I
Owner.
call
I
it
mean, there's a lot of
the emotional roller coaster is what I call it, because you've got your one day you think you're on top of the world, everything's going great, and then the next day, you got to do payroll, you got to pay your insurance bills, or you got to pay for machine payments or something like that, and it's amazing how fast that creeps up. But it's also I guess you got to weigh those kind of balances, the highs and the lows.
so
But it's crazy how that works out.
yeah, everyone wants to be the captain of the ship until they realize there's more involved than steering
Yes.
and steering
Yes,
it.
absolutely. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And the stress associated with it. When we first started, we were doing well over 100-hour weeks, including Saturdays. And, I mean, I didn't see my wife for, she's 3 years, 5 years when we first started. And, she was amazing throughout the whole process. But, it's amazing. It's also crazy to look back on it and think, wow, we didn't have dinner together for 5 years because Chris and I were always at the shop. And we, advanced automation did take, a slow growth perspective. We didn't go out and get a bunch of investors and, kind of overextend ourselves. We wanted to create a very safe business that was growing, I would say smart, maybe as smart as we could. So we didn't hire for a bunch of years. We built up capital, we bought machines, we wanted to make sure that we got some customers out there before we took on the roles of, hiring people that we were then responsible for. So with that being said, it was a massive undertaking for just the two of us to take on in the beginning and ultimately grow. We're still not the biggest. We're only 18 people, but we're very, very talented. We have a very talented group, 18 people, and we we're extremely hands-on even today, so it allows us to build things that are, I think, cutting edge and, tip of the spear when it comes to manufacturing. And, we can do it quickly. And that's ultimately what our goal was to become.
Well, Jeremy, ultimately, you actually, you kind of lead right into that. I mean, you said you didn't raise a lot of capital, you didn't overextend yourself, but I think it's just different business models, right? I mean, there's some people
Absolutely.
that want to
Absolutely.
be that want to be a slice of a big watermelon and
Right.
give up some equity and or a lot of it sometimes, and there's other people who just want to be one big juicy grape. But the reality is, it's a lot easier to move the grapes, right? So it's a
Right.
matter of knowing your identity, And this is what's great about our country, for me is, you know, 18 person company, especially here in automation, sometimes it doesn't make a difference how many people you have. It's how much revenue per head you are creating,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
I mean, for me, I mean, I see this real world. I mean, I have a 150 to 200 employee landscape company, but we only do $10 million, right? So
Sure.
the cost per head that's generated is a very small margin. And the flip side, in automation, we only have 12 people at AOS. And when you look at the cost per person, it is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's the one thing for people listening. I just want to break this down a little bit. Like, in automation, your revenue per head is going to be much higher than a typical service business, and that's the point of what you're doing, right, Jeremy? I mean, at the end of the day,
Exactly.
you're
Exactly.
solving you're solving problems. So one of the things that I found is, you said in the beginning when you introduced yourself, you come up with custom solutions for people. So why don't you explain a little bit about that? Because it sounds to me like there's got to be a kind of a timeline and development,
Absolutely.
and how
Yeah.
how does a
Yeah.
company like yours figure out how to do this without putting yourself too far out, to know
Sure.
how long it's going to take to get somebody over the finish line?
Absolutely. So that's, I mean, that's one thing that's, interesting about us is that we very, very rarely, in fact, I can only think of a few times that we'll do multiples of a thing, so like when we build a robotic system, like I said in the beginning, it's very customized for the application that the customer is doing. And 99% of the time, we're building that thing for the first time. We don't walk down to aisle 7 of Kmart and go, hey, yeah, we need a whatever machine, and it's going to do what they want. It's very customized for the application. So it's also efficient. So we work with the customer to design efficient machines so that ultimately their ROI is there. And so it kind of crosses into that business mindset a little bit as well. But for us, we start with the problem. So we go in to a company that has a problem. Typically, that problem is, hey, I can't get enough product out the door. Help us out. Come up with some equipment that is going to be able to help us be more efficient. So our engineering basically starts there, and we do some brainstorming sessions. We come up with some different concepts. Honestly, do a cartoon sketch of what we propose, and at that point, we start ballparking. Hey, we think it's going to cost this much money to do this, but we also like to explain as much as in detail what it is that the thing that we're proposing is going to do, because I find that that's almost the hardest part, is being able to communicate what's in my mind or what's in some of our engineers' mind to what the customer A wants and B is expecting. Because a lot of times they don't know what they're expecting. They know what they want. They want to have their product go out the door faster, but they don't know that that may require, changing upstream, changing downstream, handling, how their parts come into their incoming receiving. Sometimes it makes a massive difference on the robot side if parts are singulated, if they're oriented in, blow mold packaging or something like that. And so we kind of coach them through that whole process from start to finish. Once we all kind of come up with a concept that we like, we agree on a ballpark figure, we then enter into the proposal period where we really start to take all of that and put it into words. We create a document. Sometimes that gets edited 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And then ultimately a PO gets placed. At that point, everybody is very aware of what's happening, what we're going to be delivered. And at that point, we have an understanding of timeline. The problem that we're facing right now is, the delivery of goods is still just a disaster. And so in order for us to get some components in. 3 years ago, we could say that we could build, a thing in 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Today, that thing, same exact device or system might take 14, 16, 18 weeks. In fact, I just received a fairly large positioner that we're using for welding that's moving our parts around. It was 45-week lead time. And typically that's in stock, so that's affecting timeline. And that's also playing back into the business side of things. That affects a lot of money, that affects, by then the costs of everything have probably increased. Honestly, it's given the customer some time to think about what they might want instead of what we've already proposed. So there's probably some scope creep involved at that point. And then we got to keep the project online with all of our make parts. So after we get everything in house, we've also kind of paralleled the making process of all of our make components. Then we go into an assembly. After assembly is done, our programming team comes in and starts programming everything. And then after that, we get the customer involved for training, runoff, and then ultimately delivery. And then we go through and do all of our services, warranty, and, kind of, there's a lot that is involved after the systems are delivered. So we're there for that as well. But one thing I will say, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were going to say something. You go ahead and say.
I was going to say, one thing that I will say about this industry is, we deal with very, very successful companies. People rarely come to us and say, hey, we're struggling, we need a robot. They're coming to us and saying, we can't get stuff out the door fast enough, we need a robot for something. And chances are, if you can keep that customer happy and they like what you've delivered, you've got them for the next project. And so right now we have about a 98% return rate on customers. So for us to gain one customer a year is actually massive, because we're still working on projects that are, the next project for a customer of ours that we had last year or the year before. So, it's, from that perspective, everything is just kind of growing out like layers of an onion. And then, we'll add, I think right now we're adding about 3 customers a year to it, which is substantial, because if things go well, we'd have more from them next year too. So we have a lot of stuff going on.
It just shows kind of the different business model too, of going back to a watermelon or a grape, is that your growth rate, some might seem kind of small, but your retention rate's going to stay high, because they're all getting that like founder's touch, constantly,
Exactly.
which is powerful, especially in this space. Looking at the space, by the way, that's evolving, at least for us. I mean, it might be different for you because you're in industrial automation, but why don't you talk to me about what you've seen in the past decade from when you started? Take the supply chain stuff away. Just
Sure.
A, maybe in demand, but B, in consumer expectation of the automation.
So I would say consumer expectation has gone up. They expect systems to be easier to use. They expect robotic automation to be able to be run by somebody who's not an engineer, which we completely agree with. I will say, there's also been an increased demand for that automation, because people they can't hire people. All of our customers are saying that the labor shortage is insane and they can't get people to come into work. And so they want to replace them with robots. So, not only do they want more robots, but they want them to be easier to run, it's good. It's a challenge. It's challenging for us. But then on the same side, technology is always increasing and improving, so we're able to use sensors today that we couldn't have used 10 years ago, which, between the vision systems, 3D vision, line scan imaging, that's just constantly evolving, becoming better, being easier to use as well, so we can then pass that ease on to the customer. And so our electrical and controls engineering groups have really tried to dumb down our systems, for lack of better words, to people that don't necessarily know how to program robots or, do engineering tasks. And and I mean, if you ask me, I think we've done a great job at it, but creating a front end user interface for all of our systems that are very common. And it allows the operator that, if you can use a phone, you can go over and use the robot, which is incredibly important, for future as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So now have you found, because you said you obviously you warranty your system. So have you found though that now that you have more devices on it to make it to increase its level of automation,
Yeah,
do you see any of these new devices? Obviously, the more devices you put on a piece of automation, the more chances there are for failure, which then fuels the need for a technician support and troubleshoot that step by step system that the automation is using. So you want to speak to that at all?
absolutely. So, I mean, we do. I mean, that's a big um, area for us is support. I think too that, from an electrical perspective and a controls perspective, I actually feel that things are getting more robust. So as technology increases from the connectivity perspective, even sometimes now we're going, um, if you look at the end effector of a robot, whereas before, everything was hardwired into from the gripper or the end effector back to the controller, we're able to go wireless. We weren't able to do that 10 years ago, and we can do it today. So that saves on maintenance charges for or downtime even between the robot and the controller. And I think too that that's constantly evolving, but it's also very important back to the customer service side of things that a lot of people, they want to know that if they call somebody, we're going to be there to support them. And that's, so regardless of how good technology becomes and what these robots can do, they want to know that they have a person to talk to if they need it. And that's, we want to make sure that we're doing that as well. So,
Well, and that's right now where my company is growing like crazy is all these manufacturers that make outdoor automation, but
sure.
the customer needs supported. Like, and at the
Absolutely.
end of the day, if it what happens is when you're relying on automation, you cannot allow it to go down. So it's like
Absolutely.
downtime. It's not like a person where it's like, oh, so and so is sick today, put the other person there. It's if that arm
Yeah.
is in that place, that's it. So you brought up something interesting about the wireless. So I told you I have a weird background. So I was a union electrician for 11 years also, and we used to hook up arms, probably like what you are making. And yeah, the amount of wires and the
Oh, yeah.
motor control and everything, you'd be installing cable troughs in the floors and
Yep.
stuff. So yeah, I mean that must be a huge change because the amount of time it
Absolutely.
takes to actually get it up and running has to have decreased significantly, and getting it
Yes.
set up in the first place, downtime on the floor, right?
Right. Right. So a big push that we've made too is, inputs and outputs. So an automated system has a lot of sensors. It goes out and it sees things, it feels things, it tells if there's pistons, here, there, or wherever. And you know, back several years ago, all that used to have to be terminated back into the cabinet, and it would go to a PLC, and it would have logic that would control it. Well, we're really taking advantage of a lot of remote I/O, we call it. So we're able to hub all that stuff together, and instead of having, like you're saying, you might have hundreds of cables that go back to um, the controller. Now we're able to pass things through Ethernet cables and group I/O, so that it just gives a much cleaner install. It's much faster for us on both the assembly time, the manufacturing time, but also the install time. So if we have a multi-robot system that is, it might take us a week to put in, we're not pulling cables, we're not running hardline, it's terminating a few Ethernet cables. And so that's been a huge plus, and we've really been able to take advantage of that a little bit.
So for the people that don't understand your world, you know, why don't you explain, I guess, one of your favorite solutions you automated for someone, you know?
So that's a tough one. It's a good question, but it's a tough one. So I think one that sticks out the most right now, and people may be able to understand this. So an exercise bike. So we got contracted by a company that makes pretty high end exercise bikes, and they asked us, hey, we need to make one of these. And this is typically how it works for us. They come to us and say, hey, we need to make one of these every 40 seconds, 7 days a week. I said, okay. So we go down, we sit down with their manufacturing team, go through all the processes and lay them all out, break them out so that we do time studies and figure out, what our availability time is. And ultimately, we came up with this pretty wild system. It's got 4 robots, and parts are entered in on pallets. And essentially, from somebody, a non-engineer's perspective, the robot goes over, grabs the parts that are on the pallet, presents them to press brakes, which are these big machines that bend metal. We form up the frame of this bike, and then we pass it into a weld cell where we've got 2 more robots that automatically fixture all the components onto the frame and then run a welding process for all those components. And then it indexes out, and then a 4th robot grabs the parts and restacks them onto a pallet. So, to sit there and watch that run is pretty wild. Everything is just zipping around and moving in sync. And then we also included there's a lot of inspection in that one, so we're doing a 3D line scan image where we can scan the part, make sure that it's good, make sure there's no scratches, surface defects, things like that to the parts before they go into the cell. So that one sticks out in my head. And then we actually are in the process of finishing up our second version. The second one I would say that really sticks out is a shaft collar. So we're making shaft collars, which is a simple little round disc that has a slit in it and some tapped holes and whatnot. And we got approached by a customer and said, hey, we need to make the shaft collar. Targeted cycle time is 8 seconds. Depending on the complexity, we can go up to 14 seconds or so. And so that one, we ended up building this very large, complex machine where rotary transfer tables where the parts enter in with robots and they go through. It's a 19-axis CNC, basically, at the end of the day is what we built. And it just spits these parts out, so we're making a shaft collar in about 6 seconds. And I would say that is kind of a favorite as well, mostly just because of the complexity. And the amount of parts that we had to make for that one it was insane. The level of everything. Go ahead.
And you beat their expectation by like 2 seconds, right? They came with you 8 to 14 seconds.
So, right. It was the smallest one we got down to 6. If we're doing a more complex one, we're about 12 seconds. Yeah. So
good by 2 seconds. So they had all smiles at that table.
They were.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you break down, and maybe you've done this. When you look at that 2 seconds, how many extra parts did you make them?
A lot. I mean, they're running, the last I looked at it, so we can remote in and kind of see, the status of everything and everything. And I want to say they had the machine, the first 3 months, they made 250,000 parts. But that includes, setup changeover. They've got about 1,000 different SKUs that they can run on it. So, their setups are multiple times a day. So but even still to do 250,000 parts in a few months was pretty impressive.
That's actually amazing. The thing that I always, and it sounds like the one difference in our industries is you're working with people that already kind of understand what they're coming and asking you with, versus for myself, I can imagine if you were in my position, we're trying to enter a space that's everything's done with people. And when you're trying to get them to understand the cost, they're almost saying no because it seems too good to be true.
Right.
Because they don't understand automation at all,
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And I'm glad you did expand on it a little for me, is because when you look at this, the process that's just duplicated and how companies can actually plan for that, for output, how much, what am I going to make off this part? How many parts am I going to get out the door? Now they can actually plan on sales and how many they put into the space. So I'm always fascinated by it. And I think sometimes people look at a machine, but at the end of the day, it all is numbers, whether it's binary to control it, what the output is, how much money you can make by having it. So how long do your systems usually run? Like what's the lifespan of one of your kinds of machines?
I mean, we've got systems out there that are 10 plus years in the field. And that's one thing that, we build industrial machines. So all of our stuff is intended for 24/7 runtime, 100% duty cycle. It's, it will run for usually until that part goes away. everything that's in there, is obviously replaceable as components wear out and bearings need to be replaced and whatnot. But, these robots that we're using, so we're ABB and Fanuc are the two that we use. Their life cycles are crazy. I mean, they are literally intended to run just doing the same thing back and forth for a long, long time. We obviously go through and do upgrades, and a lot of times too, we'll work with the customers to, like I said earlier, refine their process both upstream and downstream. So sometimes that involves upgrades to, say the central system a little bit to make it so that their whole throughput of the plant is more efficient, not just that one particular process, because that's ultimately what they're looking for.
Yeah. So when you're trying to figure out what they're looking for and you're trying to custom make somebody a machine, you said there's obviously stuff on the front end. So you kind of bake that all in at the end of what you're going to charge, or do you just like, I'm interested, I'm intrigued in how you spend all the time to get even a product on paper. Like how do you bill for that?
So it's a tough one, honestly, because sometimes people don't think that they should pay for that, and we ultimately just kind of bake it into the overall cost of the project. There's definitely, we call it non-recurring engineering fee or a cost. And so the NRE for that, sometimes we lose a lot of money on it, but we hope that we gain it back when it comes to, secondary work or, gaining a customer that we're going to have for a long time. So go ahead.
Well, it amazes me. So listen, I'm going to be the guy to say it so you don't get in any trouble with your customers, but that would be like someone expecting someone to do all the engineering and architecture work for a sty rise and do it for free. And then give all the drawings and renderings out with not worrying about the risk of them farming it out to the next lowest bidder. I mean, I can
Right.
tell you for myself, even in the landscaping world, it's always hard. We stopped doing drawings for people because we
Yeah.
were like, yeah, we're not going to give it away. So, I mean, I'm assuming maybe it's such a small niche of people, you don't have to worry about that as much in your space. But
That's true. And the other thing,
that's what would give me the most heartburn as a founder if I were you.
no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And the thing too that I should clarify is that we're not sharing all of our CAD work. We're not sharing our engineering designs. We're, at most case they'd be able to steal the concept and take it someplace, if that makes sense. But we own the the engineering work, we own the design portion of it. And then, at that point, I mean, when we get to the point where we're doing the nitty gritty design work, we've already got the order. So that, but, that comes back to us doing the quoting. We need to make sure that when we quote a job, we can, put a line item in there that's, hey, we think that this is going to take 200 hours of design work to even get to the point where we can build this thing, and I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes we're way off. Other times we do pretty good, and I guess maybe that's a good segue into the other half of our business. So we decided from the very beginning when we started this company that we weren't going to outsource anything. So all of our systems that we build start here. We pull in raw stock, raw aluminum, steel, plastic, and we make our machines from that. Besides the robots, of course, and the electrical components. But in order for us, one of the things that we said, we wanted to own was the process. And so where we may go a little bit over on, say, the design time, we're able to make up because we're not paying other people to make our parts, if that makes sense. So when we look at one of the systems that we've got on the floor right now is just over 2,000 parts in it based on the CAD model. So, of those 2,000 parts, we might have 500 pieces that are machined. We might have, 150 pieces of sheet metal, and then, weldments that are made up of, in some cases, 60 to 100 parts, so, and then of course everything goes on from there. But we're able to take all of that. We're building, so I just cleared room for a new CNC that's coming in. We've got 8 CNCs down there now. And then we've got um, two water jets, press brakes, and a full welding department. So we're able to do everything to build these machines under one roof. And we brought in the powder coat. So we've got the ability to powder coat all of our stuff, frames, panels, components, everything. We even brought in heat treat so we can heat treat all of our tool steels. Um, and we're a UL listed panel shop as well. So we're able to build all of our enclosures, wire everything, follow all the UL requirements. So the only thing that we send out is for plating. So if we're making something that's got to get anodized or nickel plating or something like that, that goes outside. But we're able to be very flexible when it comes to the design because we're making everything ourselves, and B, we can make up some of that, potential lost time, like we're saying in the quoting process, to being able to make the parts ourselves and not have to pay an expedite fee by somebody that may be down the road, if that makes sense.
So in your 12 years, how many of these systems have you made? How many robots did you
So,
get your hands on?
that's a good question. I don't know. I know that we're well into the hundreds of robots. I quite honestly don't know the answer to that. I probably should, but I don't know. I can tell you right now, we have 15 systems on the floor right now. And we've got a whole mess of them coming in after this. So, they're all different shapes, sizes, and they do all sorts of different things too. We can't say that one does, they all do one thing.
So that kind of leads into the next question that honestly wasn't written down, but you're kind of making my mind turn. So, thinking about how long, thinking about the amount of front end work that goes in, and thinking about all these like large scale like computer learning models, could you take any of your designs and start plugging them in to like an AI model to help speed you
It's funny.
along?
I actually, so I'm myself, maybe this is old school thinking, but I'm scared of AI. I think that it has potential to do bad things, but I do think that, that could be something that you could do. I mean, I think with enough experience, um, in the design, but you'd have to set it up so that it's different sectors, so like
Yeah.
in our world, it would be, say paint robot or a dispensing system or machine tending or assembly, and then I'm sure you could feed it a whole bunch of information and then have it come back with something. And you know what? It'll probably happen. I guarantee you that
Yeah.
it'll get to that point. It scares me, to be honest with you, but I feel like it could happen. Yeah.
See, but that's so to me, that's where, because I've been looking a lot into this for the stuff that we're doing. And it's like, if you, it's like you're, I agree with you to a point. There's a part of me that scares me a little with it. But on the flip side, I also look at it like if I don't do it or you don't do it,
You don't.
somebody else is going to do it in your
You're
space.
absolutely
Eh,
You're absolutely
and that by the way might be what gets us into trouble, right? Because the
right.
wrong person is going to do it with zero checks and balance, and bad stuff's going to happen. But I just look at it as an entrepreneur, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, to say, okay, how can you kick out, as you brought them up, those cartoon sketches you guys make or diagrams, right? How, how,
Yep.
how do you kick those out and just kind of
Right.
show the customer like, hey, look at how much faster I do it than XYZ automation down the road,
Right.
because this is what we do, and
Correct.
it's so you could essentially design it so that you don't give it so much free reign or free will, I guess, as we could put it, to run away with it, but just do enough to net you a customer before somebody else does. Um,
Mhm.
I think if you use it for that, it's a little less scary, right?
I think so. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of ways that, technology, I mean, even look at our industry, I mean, technology is always making things better, whether I mean, even our CNCs, let's look at that just for a second. So our oldest machine out there is 6 years old, I think. And if you compare, you walk up to that one that's 6 years old and you go and look at one that's literally coming in on Monday, the differences are amazing. At the end of the day, it's a CNC and it's the same, same physical size. It cuts metal and aluminum or whatever. But this one's faster. It's more accurate. It's just all around better. And so things evolve. And I think that the design process has a ton of potential for that evolution. And I think that tools will get better to make that faster. What scares me a little bit though is that sometimes the design, especially in our industry where, we're designing something that's never been built before. That's what we do every single day. We are literally building, model number one every day. And if that design isn't efficient, not necessarily how it was designed, but what it is, it can cost a tremendous amount of money in the machine shop, in the fabrication shop. Simple things like hole locations, size of holes, grouping of them. It plays a huge role downstream for us. And so there's a lot that we're very, we look at our designs very closely, to make sure that, because there is so many different ways that we could design something, a widget, to do what we're asking for. It's important for us to make sure that we're designing it so that we ultimately make money on it, if that makes sense. And you can lose a project pretty quick by just having a bad design. If that design doesn't work, for one, you got to rebuild it. That sucks. And then if you design it so that it's way more expensive than it needs to be from a manufacturing perspective, it just, that hurts. So that's where the design is really important. And I think we've made our mistakes. There's no question about it. But we've also got such a wide, kind of vault, I guess, is to pull from when it comes to different designs that we've done, different things that worked, or quite honestly, failures that we've had in the past. And it allows us to very quickly get to a solution and a design that we are pretty confident is going to work. But of course, then we have obviously I can build it and test it. So
I was going to say, I just want to go back to you saying that, you keep customers, and I just can't help but think, okay, well, what about the company making the bike? Why, you have a one of one, but what, eventually maybe you have a two of two, because why would they not scale and make more bikes?
absolutely,
Why, so
absolutely,
eventually, I mean, you're making one of ones right now, but
right.
when you help those companies achieve the success, and especially keep manufacturing here in this country,
Yeah,
with how much more expensive it is to ship things, which is probably why you're actually having so much trouble actually getting parts, like
yeah.
you said, shipping. It's like, yeah, then you start building two of twos and the third unit. So, um,
Yeah, so we do have our own we've developed kind of our own, we call it our MTS, which is a machine tending solution, and it stands for machine tending solution, and it's a modular automated system that's designed to go next to some sort of process, and it's essentially to tend a machine, so a CNC machine, a laser engraver, a wire EDM machine, um, lathes, mills, whatever you want. And so we sell a bunch of those. Those I would say are not the onesies. We're doing probably 15 to 20 of those a year based on, customer demand and whatnot. And those are a little bit different, so we've got that product line, if you will call it a product line. They're still very customized. Not one of them is the same because it's all customized to the customer's specifications. But those are a little bit more, we've refined those to the point where we can get them out quick and we can make those.
yeah,
But we still
well,
have big ones that are not.
yeah, but that's good. I mean, that's your niche, right? I mean, that's what you
Right.
guys do, probably better than most, is, you're able to ask, figure out a problem, complex problem, um, and exceed expectations by 2 seconds.
Right.
Like you said, So,
Yeah.
so not to spend too much time. I mean, obviously, it is automating success, but I always like to learn more about my guests and their background. And quite frankly, Jeremy, time's been flying on
Yep.
the
Yep.
business side. So tell me a little more about your background. Start from a young Jeremy. Your
So, yep.
childhood.
So I think my parents left me in the Lego play box too long. I have just always loved to build things. That has been I love making stuff. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, I asked my dad for a go-kart, and he came home with a welder, and he said, "All right, we're going to build a go-kart." And I think that was one of the earliest memories I have of really, starting to build stuff. Um, and you know, just I through high school, I built water slides. Worked for a water slide manufacturer, did installs. Towards the end of high school, I started building ski lifts, which was absolutely the coolest job ever. So we were, using equipment on the top of mountains, digging footings, running excavators. We'd fly in concrete, fly in the ski lift towers. And then as I was going through college, really started to get into the metal fabrication side of things. So I got the opportunity to build some stuff. I was actually on the Discovery Channel for 2 years doing um, there was a little metal fabrication show, and so we were building some pretty elaborate frames and things like that, and that was a lot of fun. But it got to the point where I was like, all right, now I've got this degree, I've got to actually use it, So that's when I went off to Wheeling and started getting into robots and things like that.
So what was the show you were on? No, I can't
So I was on How and How Technology, How and How Tech, I think is what it was called. And I don't know if you're familiar with the rip saw. So it's been in actually the last one that I built was in Mad Max. If you've watched the latest Mad Max video, there's one where it's got like they put a car body on it, I think, but that was a really cool build. So that's got a big old Merlin 509 big block in it with a supercharger, and it was like 1,400 horsepower, I think, and that had a full blown 2-inch chromoly tube chassis that I did obviously with them. I was working with them as a welder fabricator, but that was my last project that I had with them, and it was cool. I mean, it was by far the just really interesting. And of course those were all tracked, so they would go anywhere. And that would go about 0 to 80 in probably three seconds or so. So it top speed about 80 miles an hour. It was wild. So
yeah,
it was pretty cool.
Amazing. Yeah,
It was
so. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. That's pretty cool. So
yeah.
So obviously you've always been into building stuff. I love the go-kart thing. I tried to build a go-kart without a welder with 2x4s somehow and a old Edger engine and some bicycle wheels. And it was all fine and good until I tried to sit in it, and then things went awry quickly, But the wheel did spin with the engine. I was pretty impressed with myself on it,
Sure.
So
that's awesome.
So, yeah. So my go-kart I don't think was as good as yours from what it sounds like. So so did you? I mean, you were building stuff. Did you play any sports, or are you always just wrenching?
Yeah, I was a big skier. I was so growing up in the White Mountains area, I was a big alpine skier. Ski raced all the way through up till college. And so skiing in the winter, which was pretty much every day. And then mountain biking all summer. Playing in the mountains, doing what you do up there. It's a pretty. I grew up in a small town. We didn't even have a traffic light. So it was woods and skiing. So
yeah. So do you have any siblings? You brought up dad bringing home a welder to build your go-kart?
Yeah, I have a sister. She's the smart one. She does liver transplants down in Charlotte. So she's down there. And then I got a wife and 2 kids, 2 young kids. Maddie, my son's just turned 4. And then Riley, my daughter, is a year and a half almost. So we're getting there. But it's been a busy couple of years.
Time flies. So where'd you meet your wife?
So we went to school together. Although it's funny, we didn't really know each other through school. It was kind of mutual friends after school that we kind of met that way. So
isn't that something? So what did she go to school for then?
So she's a mental health counselor. And she still works. So she actually works at UNH right now as a mental health counselor.
So does she counsel you through the tough times, like
Yeah,
payroll and stuff, or what?
I think what she's doing, I think she's like subliminarily doing it. She's definitely not, right to my face, but it's yeah, I think she does a little bit.
Yeah,
But
like a little
no,
puppet master or something.
yeah, exactly. She puts up with all my stuff. I have a tendency to, buy equipment, and she puts up with that. So she's great. She's awesome.
Yeah, so see, that's actually kind of, it's funny you say you buy equipment and she puts up with it. That's how I feel about my brother John, who's my other business owner, and he's
Yep.
younger than me by several years, but he has more gray hairs, and he says it's because and I just won't stop buying stuff, And
Yeah.
I went and I just got a PRX. I just went and got a Dodge truck, and my brother's
Yeah.
like, why do we need this? And I'm like, listen, I'm going to drive for 2 years. I'll make
Cool.
money on it. Yeah, I was like, I'll make money on it. He's like, how the hell are you going to make money on a truck? And I go, you'll see,
Yeah.
you'll see.
Yeah.
And I tell him the same story every time. He's just gotten so used to it now. But yeah. So,
Yeah, I came home with an excavator once, and she was a little questioning that, but we made it work.
yeah. So I mean, there's nothing like running an excavator. By the way, we have in the landscaping company. I love it. So why'd you even need an excavator? By the way, I'm going to actually ask Taylor now. So explain this, because I'm starting to think about it. I don't know why you would need an excavator in the automation work.
Oh, no. It's definitely not. It's not related to that. So I honestly I love equipment. I used to drive snowcats back in high school too. So I was grooming, and I've always just loved, machines. And so about 4 years ago now, I'd say we got lucky and were able to purchase some property up in Maine. And I said, hey, let's, we can do this. We can clear it ourselves. We can put the driveway in. We can dig the footings. We can do all that stuff. So next thing you know, we got an excavator in the driveway. And then after that, now we got a bobcat in the driveway. So it's just kind of keeps snowballing a little bit. And it's been fun.
So what'd you build up in Maine then? What type is it?
Yeah. So we got really lucky with my grandparents ended up buying a camp probably 35 years ago, I'd say, right on a pretty good sized lake up there, Lake Sebago. And about, like I said, 4 years ago or so, we were actually got a piece of property right next to that. And then we've been in the process of building a house up there as just kind of a getaway. We just love the area. So it's about a 2-hour drive ish from where we live down in southern New Hampshire, up to the lake area. But so we cleared all the property, and I mean, really, the bobcat's a great way to have a kid take a nap. They get in there, and it's before you know it, your kid's taking a nap, and you can't get out at that point. So
yeah, exactly. Yes,
we may have cleared more than we should have.
I had my daughter in a skid steer once, and I was kind of using that same thought process until I hit something a little harder, and she flew forward and put quite a knot on her head. But ironically, she's around equipment now, so it's kind of funny because once you're around equipment like that, they'll be running it better than you. Watch. So
he's 4 and he runs it right now, which is crazy. But it's great to see. It's fun. So
yeah, it is. So I just built a hobbit house up in Door County, so I was kind of doing the same thing. So you talked about your co-owner, so tell me a little about that relationship.
Yeah. So Chris is my co-owner. He is the electrical brains, control brains. He's also the smart one. And basically handles everything electrical and controls to the company. So the way we kind of split it up was I was in charge of all mechanical design, face-to-face with the customer, sales, and the assembly side of things. And then he handles programming, controls, electrical, all that type of stuff. So it works out really well. With the two of us kind of on two ends of the aisle, basically. And, then we've got a group of people that kind of group under him, group under me. And of course we're working together every day. So
how do you go about finding your talent to make these machines?
That to be quite honest with you is the hardest thing that we've done. Finding people is really, really difficult, especially because, I mean, we have a different philosophy here. Like our engineers are, quote unquote degreed engineers, but they also know how to run equipment. They know how to weld, they know how to put stuff together. So, um, we're not, we've got a very deep physical, hands-on talent pool here. Most of them have engineering degrees, but it's been hard. Our biggest thing is if we get somebody who's got a work ethic and somebody who shows drive or shows that they want to learn. In some areas, I almost think that's better than a degree, and it's we've had great success with that. But we still do work with UNH. UNH is only about 20 minutes away, University of New Hampshire, and they have a fairly new. It's called their Advanced Manufacturing Center. So we actually help them create that, put in some robots, put in some CNC equipment, PLCs, and try to basically get a hands-on engineering approach so that it's not just all theory based. And then ultimately, we've hired a few of them from there, so that's worked out pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what you said is so true. I mean, you can't teach work ethic, either
No,
have it or you don't. And
right?
the the reality is there's nothing more uninspiring to a founder and business owner that's in it, like doing it with
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
than seeing someone kind of a lead anchor on the team, and I know
right.
personally for me, and I don't know if you deal with this, especially because it sounds like you had a pretty intimately sized team, is, it's like my biggest problem. I don't know if you suffer from this, is kind of knowing when to cut somebody, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like you bring
Absolutely.
somebody on and you have faith that you can kind of teach that work ethic or you can get them to fit the culture. But some
Right.
people, it just, no education in the world can get
No,
them.
no, and that is hard. I mean, that's definitely something that um, is a new, it's a new challenge to business ownership that ultimately I never really considered. When we started, it was never something that I had even thought about that someday we would have to let somebody go or even, go through the firing process. It's still probably one of the things that I hate the most. At the end of the day, we're engineers. We like to build things. That's what we like to do, and I sometimes look at these people and I'm like, don't you want to do that too? Like let's work together as a team to figure this out.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's hard to find people that have the drive, um, that want to do it. So, and we have a great team. I mean, we have really good people. I feel like we have a very, very, um, you know, deep selection of knowledge. Everybody has their own um, little niche that they're in, and they're very good at it. So we have an awesome team, but we're always looking for more. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that holds us back is finding people that want to join our team and that are interested in doing that. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things for me is I realized I had to get my company and the current new one I'm building large enough so I don't have to hire or fire people because
exactly,
it's
yes,
literally my least favorite part of owning a business. I want to teach and mentor people, but
exactly,
it's also one of my biggest weaknesses is them knowing when to finally kind of
yep,
say this is just not working out. Because I do, I mean, and I'm sure it's like this for you. It's like I have my family and then I have my work family. And what it
absolutely. Oh
is
yeah,
they, you get to know these people and you know about their families and their backgrounds and
yeah,
what they're doing. And it's really hard to separate personal from business sometimes.
absolutely. Oh no, I couldn't agree more. And I like I said, I don't think I ever would have thought that it was as hard as it is until you're in it. And
Yeah.
you know, I walk through our parking lot from time to time and I just look at the amount of cars that are there. And I know, I mean, we're a small business, only 18 people, but
Yeah.
you look at those cars and you're like, wow, okay, that's 18 families that we're responsible for. Like, I gotta go make this sale right now. I gotta go have a
Yes.
good conversation with this company. And, I never would have thought of that to begin with. And it's amazing how that plays into the whole thing. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So So what are you, I mean, what are your goals for your future growth? I mean, obviously your company is where it is now.
Sure.
Uh, how much larger do you see it getting? And is that even what you care
Oh,
for anymore, you know?
yeah, I mean that's a tough question. I think that obviously, I think a lot of people think bigger is better, and I don't know in this industry if that's necessarily true. Um, I think it is if you were to take certain parts of our business and break it off and create much larger businesses out of it, which is part of what we're trying to do with our manufacturing side. So that I think, from a manufacturing perspective, we can grow that to be as big as we want it to be. When it comes to custom automation that is, truly a one-off, um, customer to customer, I think that's going to be a much harder thing to grow, based on just the talent pool that you need and how much communication is required in order to get a good product out the door that you're still making money on. That's a one-off. Um, so that I think is going to be separated out. And I think one of the biggest goals that we've had and will continue to have is to use what we've got now as the foundation. So we've created a pretty good foundation of capability, people, and customers to ultimately kind of grow into different areas. So we can, take our MTS line, productize that a little bit more. We have the horsepower behind our manufacturing side to do that, push more of those, get into the sales side of things a little bit. Um, and then on the manufacturing, just keep growing, add machines, add people to that. That's a pretty, I'm not going to say linear, but it's typically if you add a machine and a person, if you have the customer, you're going to make money at it. Whereas automation, that may not be true. If we were to add somebody to the team that, isn't working out, or that project runs into some problems, then, it's a much different business model.
Yeah.
So I think our goals would be to kind of break things apart a little bit and, continue doing the custom automation the way we are, and then continue to push our product, but then also grow our manufacturing as something that's, going to be, I think, bigger in the long run. And then the other side of that too is as we grow our manufacturing capabilities, we can automate those, so we have the people in house that we can start to do our own automation, for making products for either ourselves or other people.
Yeah.
So it's all connected, I guess, if you look at it from that
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a huge advantage. A company like yours has is because once you get a system you can replicate, you can automate it for yourself, and
Exactly.
you know. So no,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So how many? I'm interested. I'm
Yeah.
literally off script right now because there's a million questions I could keep asking you, but we're gonna run out of time. But so
No.
like to make the like you say you're doing a lot of this stuff in house. So like how many square feet under roof do you need in order to
So,
do that?
oh yeah, so we are literally busting at seams right now, which is a problem that we're trying to solve. So we're currently in 16,000 square feet, so we're pretty small. That 16,000 square feet you can hardly walk through. So we need, I would say, our next jump's probably going to be to 50, if I had to guess, 50,000 square feet. Um, you know, and I could see us filling that pretty quick. So, um,
Are most of your customers on the East Coast then? Like being that
yes,
you're
yeah.
so
So
far north and east, you know?
no, it's true, but it's amazing. So our furthest system, um, currently is in Tennessee, but that's an outlier. So we travel pretty much New York City north. If you were to take New York City, draw a line straight up, that's our targeted area. We've got a few systems down in Manhattan, and then we go all the way up almost to the Canadian border, doing the the bikes that we were talking about earlier. So we're very, all over that area. But quite honest, going back a little bit where we said, "How big are you?" It's not efficient for us to travel out west, Midwest, West Coast. We've got enough right now, anyways. We have a really good customer base over here, so and we can give them the attention that they need because we're local. We can get there quick. Um,
Mm.
so that's kind of our targeted area. I think it would be really hard for us. We would need to grow a lot to be able to travel further to support the customers that we've got here the way we do now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, totally does. The beautiful area, by the way. I was in Cape
Yes.
Cod a
Oh yeah.
few months ago, and
Yeah.
I just was,
Yeah.
perfect time of the year to be there. By the way, I think it was like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but just absolutely beautiful up there.
Yeah.
Um, so so this is kind of where we round out the show. You said I'd ask you a couple hard questions. Most people typically think this one's the hardest, but some answer it quicker than others. So, you know, take take it all into perspective. At the end of the day, with everything you're doing and being a founder of your own company, what is it that you want your legacy to be? Like, what do you want people to remember your mark on your segment to be?
Yeah, that is a tough question. I guess, if we were to look at it from like a business perspective, I would like them to look at our company as something that they, trust, a company that creates a good product, a company that they like to work with, and a company that they can grow with. And that's, we ultimately, at the end of the day, help companies grow by creating equipment that helps them grow.
Mhm.
Um, so that's where I guess I know that might be a cheesy answer, but
No,
that's
it's not.
kind of
So
what
you want to be the partner that fuels your customer slash partner relationships growth
yeah,
in parallel with yours.
right, right.
Yeah, I know.
That,
I don't. I think the answer is great. See, that's what's always funny to me. Like every time I ask somebody this question, which by the way, if somebody ever turned it around on me, I don't even know how
yeah.
to answer.
So let me turn it around on you. What's yours?
Uh, so you son of a gun. So well, it's a double. I have two companies, right? So, um, for me, the first company I started, which was the snow removal company, uh, I have had people that have given me their nights and weekends and uh, just an infinite amount of time away from their families. Um, and I just want to continue to create opportunity. Like the whole reason my legacy to grow that company, it, that company's gotten to a size now where I have the opportunity to do things like I'm doing right now, to have this podcast. But I want to I want to continue to create opportunity for those that
Yeah,
gave me their time so that
sure.
they can have the same opportunity later on in their life that I've had so far in mine. Okay. That's first. Now, when it comes to the automation, so that's that company. When it comes to the automation side of what I'm doing, I literally believe I am the person that can change the landscape space to make it more professional or be seen more professionally. And what I mean by that is this: in my space in professional landscape and snow removal, I think there's some of the most uh, hardworking, intellectual entrepreneurs in the country.
Yeah,
But when I moved in, like where I live right now, I live on a golf course, $1 million houses, and people would say, "Wait, you're a landscaper?" And it's always gotten under my skin because
yeah.
it's a really hard business to run. Low
Oh,
margin, high
sure,
turnover, tons
sure.
of environmental pressure, travel time, commodity, fuel prices. Anyways, right? But I have a unique background to bring automation into a space that
Sure.
likely would have never seen it. And then once I do that, I think that people will actually see the space more professionally because
Yep.
it'll look like spaces like you're in,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I know that was a really long legacy answer. See, so I mean, I answered it kind of shitty. I screwed up my own question, but the reality for me is, yeah, it's like it's in 20 years for people to say, man, Joe and his team really made an impact on our industry to
Yep.
elevate the level of not only professionalism, but I actually believe automation in our space will increase the base salary of all landscaping professionals.
I
Um,
believe.
yeah. So
I mean,
that's
that
what
was
it is.
something. And that was something that we never touched on, but it's, automation helps create jobs. Everybody
Yes.
that is so afraid of robots taking over and eliminating workers. I mean, we put robots in the field every day and we've never once taken somebody's job away from them.
So, we didn't touch on it, Jeremy, because I think this is like, you're going to be episode probably somewhere around
Yeah.
60,
Okay.
and I don't, that's the point where I don't want to sound like a broken record where I'm
Everybody
beating it
says
into
it.
people's
You're
heads,
absolutely right.
but,
Yes.
but listen, since you brought it up, now I'm going to take the opportunity to
Well,
say this, like at the end of the day, in every industry has it. In my industry, I call it the grass ceiling. Okay. And what that ceiling is, the consumer will only pay $30 to $50 an acre to cut an acre of grass. And the cost of the equipment's increasing, fuel is increasing, trucks are increasing, workman's comp costs are increasing, every cost increases. So then what's going to stay? Payroll, what you can pay a person to do it. So they're stuck at a dead end job. It's like the argument I cannot stand when I open up Facebook or any social media and they talk about the self checkouts.
Mhm.
Okay. And they're like, well, not going to shop at Walmart anymore. I'm not going to give you that money to get self checkout. Well, that's a crock of shit
Yeah.
because there's an electrician that hooks it up.
I was
Okay.
just going to go there. You beat me to
Yeah.
it. You beat
That
me to
shows
it.
up. Some software programmer made all of that work just so you just hit buttons, boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
So it created a higher paying job that
Yes.
likely spends money at a place you work.
Right. Well, so in our field or in our sector, we are competing with China. So people can make things cheap if they send them overseas. So they and what they do there is the terrible work conditions, labor rates are awful. But what we can offer is a solution on their manufacturing side at a rate that may not be what they're getting at China. I'm going to be honest, but it keeps it here. So it allows, if we take that whole aspect that you just talked about, now we're using power that's made here in the US or local, I should say. We're using the shipping companies that are local. We're if the building is now here in the United States, the grass needs to get cut here. So that's a job. We've got the cleaners have to come in and clean the buildings. That's a job. I mean, it goes far beyond just whether or not you made this here in the United States and somebody made it or it's being made in China. It's all the peripheral support structure that I think is so important to keep here in the US. And that's a conversation that I have with people all the time. Is like, oh, robots take jobs. No, they don't. They create for every product that we keep here in the US. It ripples out to support people and utility workers and IT departments. I mean, all of those jobs are here because the product is here. So it's having that product here in the United States is incredibly important. And I think, quite honestly, the only way that we can do that is through industrial automation.
Listen, every person I talk to will bring up something about what I'm doing that's going to take jobs or what you're doing. You're going to take
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
And, I look back at parallels. Like I can imagine being a phone operator way back when and just running a switchboard, right?
Yeah.
And then when they found out that they were going to start wiring it so it just rang on its own, those people had to go bonkers, crazy.
Right.
What am I going to do?
Right.
I'm going to have no job, right? And then you see all those telephone lines getting hit by construction workers and all this
Yeah.
stuff, and there's technicians patching lines and stuff. Can't find enough people. And then cell phones come, and all those people that fix the lines are probably like, "Oh my god, my job's obsolete. I'll never have it."
Yep.
But then they realize they're installing the fiber to get
Yes.
cell power to support the wireless. Okay,
Yes.
so now there's that job. So, and that's the thing I try to explain to people is we live in a throwaway society now, which means no one keeps things. I mean, you're almost like I have a '95 Mustang, and
Mhm.
what's crazy is that's an old car now,
Yeah.
and
And
and,
yeah.
and they don't exist, right?
Yeah.
Like we live in a society where it's like you drive it, you get rid of it. It goes and it
Yeah.
gets flushed and it turns into something else. So because
Yeah.
we live in a society like that, there's not enough people to make all the things we want to consume.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, then you even get into things like recycling, and it's like, okay, you can make a robot to help recycling.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could
We've actually worked on projects with that. Yeah.
per-
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's one of the things, I guess, going back to my legacy stuff, why did I start this podcast? I started it because I wanted to bridge people like yourself with end users, and basically bring those two audiences together so
Yeah.
that an end user could call a guy like you and say, make me this. Okay.
Right.
And a guy
Right.
like you could say, hey, I'm going to make something like this. And an end user be like, ooh, I could use something almost like that, just tweak. Um,
Yep.
because this is business. This is what it is. It's people with ideas and different levels not success, but creativity. Just kind of
Mhm.
getting into one melting pot, cream rises to the top, and here we are in the greatest country that we could be in.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Anything that we can do to keep stuff here, that's our goal, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah, totally. So listen, Jeremy, it's been awesome to have you on the show. I
thank you
actually
very
feel
much.
like the last 15 minutes, once you started asking me the questions, I think maybe you should co-host with me or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let
Uh,
me know. I'll join in anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. So, but yeah. So, anyways, I appreciate the time. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving.